Welcome to Speak Out. I'm Sandy Galiff, a member of the New York State Assembly, representing parts of northern Westchester and parts of Putnam County. And today I'm going to be talking with one of my colleagues in Albany, Senator Terry Gipson, and I'm so glad that he's here to join me today.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here, Terry. And your district is the 41st district, so tell me about, we overlap.
Right.
In the Putnam area.
Right.
But then you go on beyond that.
Yes, my district, the northern tip of my district is the Columbia County border line where Dutchess and Columbia County come together. That's the town of Red Hook is really the furthest distance in my district. I go all the way down to the Westchester border, so it's Dutchess and Putnam County. I go all the way over to the Connecticut border in Dutchess, and then down in Putnam I have the towns of Phillipstown, Kent, and Putnam Valley, and Hudson River is really my border there. So it's a very diverse district, both population-wise, geography-wise, interest-wise. You know, it's extremely diverse, and I enjoy that because lots of different issues, lots of different problems and challenges to deal with.
Right, and you're in the car a lot, just like I am, but I'm not in the car quite as much as you are. But you know, nobody organizes events
right.
in an order of
They
the
never
community.
do. They never
geographically.
do.
No,
No, they never do. I tell people I have three offices. I have my office in Poughkeepsie, which is my district office. I have my office in Albany, and I have my car, which is my third office. I think I probably spend more time in the car office than I do anywhere else because I'm always going from one place to another and meeting with constituents or going to events. But it's enjoyable. You get to really find out what's going on in the district, and that's how you learn what you need to be doing.
Right. You started out, I guess your service in government was as a village trustee in Rhinebeck.
Right.
And I love Rhinebeck. It's such a very pretty place. So what were the issues that you were involved in when you were village trustee, and how different are they from the state senate?
Well, they're very different. But I do have a lot of respect for anyone that works at a local government level, because my experience was that the problems that we were dealing with on a daily basis were really things that have a dramatic impact on the daily lives of individuals that live in your community. You know, we're the ones that have to deal with the fire departments and the police departments, the water, the sewage, the garbage. Those are all things that affect your life every single day, and only really your local government elected officials can really deal with those things. That's what they're really tasked to do. So it's a lot of responsibility, actually, just in a more compact way, and you're doing it with a lot less money, really. You know, the funds that you raise there are certainly, you know, much smaller than what you're dealing with in New York State. And of course, there's never enough money to go around, so you're always trying to figure out how to manage the budget. I found that experience in local government to be incredibly helpful for me now in my state Senate seat. In fact, my experience there was what helped motivate me to run for the Senate in the first place, because I felt like New York State was not helping us enough as a local government. I felt like they were putting a lot of roadblocks in our way, and I felt like that in terms of their efficiency and being effective at helping us needed a lot of help and improvement. And I thought that rather than complaining about it, maybe I should try to do something about it myself. So.
And it really does help, because I was on the county level, and when you go to Albany and you're dealing with issues, I think you think about the other governments that are going to be impacted by your decisions. Not that we're always perfect in our votes in those matters, but I think we make a different judgment call because of that.
Right. Yes, definitely. It's been a big transition, but I can't imagine being a senator now and not having had that local government experience. I think, you know, some experience is very helpful. You know, it taught me quickly that, you know, government takes frustratingly much longer than you want it to do things. You learn that at the local level too. You also learn at the local level that you have to find a way to reach an agreement with the other people that are on your board, that you may be on the board with people that have differences of opinion with you, and you have to find a way to work through it. The same thing happens in Albany, just on a much bigger scale, obviously, and much more complicated. But at the end of the day, it's still about, you know, forming relationships, trying to find people that you can, you know, share common goals with, and moving forward. And
so, as a relative newcomer to Albany, what did you think you were going to find, and has it been any different from what you thought, or is it just exactly, you know, what you anticipated when you decided to run?
Well, it's been moving so fast. It's kind of hard to, you know, it's hard to answer that question because it's just, you know, been nonstop since the day I won. But Yeah, I did a lot of research before I decided to run for the state senate. I didn't just wake up one day and say I want to do this. I decided I was interested, but I decided to spend some time in Albany, and I did. I went up and watched quite a few of the sessions in both the Assembly and the Senate. I met with some senators and Assembly members. I talked to a variety of people that worked up there. I tried to get a sense of how it worked and what the daily routine would be like for me, to see if it was something I would be interested in doing. And so I was kind of prepared for what it would be like. There are certainly a lot of things that are happening that you just wouldn't have known until you had the chance to be a part of it. What happens in sort of the negotiation process of trying to move bills forward is something you don't know until you experience it. How you interact with your colleagues is something that's so much bigger scale than working at a town level.
Well, you came from Rhinebeck, and one of the experiences I had was the different opinions from, especially New York City.
Yes.
My colleagues in New York City, of which we have many of them,
Yes.
and maybe up in Buffalo, well, you have farms, and I don't have as many farms, but
Right.
even people that are, in agriculture and so on. A lot of issues that I really hadn't really given a great deal of thought about, and difference of opinion.
This is a good point. I think that probably is one of the things that I had not thought much about. It wasn't too long after I was elected that I found myself looking over bills that I would have to vote on that only concerned New York City, because it used state funds. And I don't live in New York City. I used to a long time ago. But so to have a voice in what happens in New York City, I thought was a bit odd. But again, it is taxpayer money, and you have to put a decision on that and decide if it's worth it. But you're right. People throughout both sides of the aisle, no matter where you live, everyone has a different opinion, and the geography has a lot to do with that. And but to me, that's what makes it interesting. It reminds you that you're one small part of a big government process, and your ability to achieve things is really due to your ability to understand what the other person's needs are and work with them on
Right.
it. So.
Did you ever know about Tuesdays in Albany? Tuesdays in Albany, where the buses
Yes.
arrive, and
Yeah.
did you? Because
I-
that
that-
floored me a lot.
Yeah.
The people from your district that are coming up to meet with you on budget or
Yes.
legislation. It was quite a
Yeah,
quite an experience.
Thinking back, I guess that was surprising to me. I wasn't aware of how many meetings I would have in the course of a day. And, well, in the course of an hour, how many meetings I might have.
Right.
And I hired a very seasoned office assistant who had worked in several assembly offices and Senate offices, so they knew what to expect. But I didn't, and so the first couple of days where I had meetings back to back to back to back to back,
Right.
It was that was a new experience.
Right. It's switching gears all the time
Yeah.
with topics.
Right.
You talk to a group of people for maybe 5 minutes or
Right.
10 minutes or 15.
Yeah, 15,
And
yeah.
then you're off to another
Right.
topic, and your head is just spinning.
Yes.
And at the end of a Tuesday, you say, "Oh my goodness, I've talked about 40 different issues."
Right. Yeah. It's amazing. 15 minutes is a long meeting actually in Albany.
Right.
That's a long time, and it's amazing what you can actually get done. I think it really, in some ways, helps you become a more effective communicator, because you realize you have very limited time, and you try as best you can that time to get right down to the heart of the matter of what the constituents have come to speak to you about, and try to figure out how you can help them. And I found it to be pretty effective, actually, at just getting right down to the heart of the matter. And but yeah, it can be an overwhelming experience.
Right.
But I think you get better at it as time goes on.
Right. Now, thinking about issues, have different issues come up in your district that you've had to deal with, maybe legislatively, home rule requests and that kind of thing? Or what other broad issues have you started to pick up on that you feel are important to either your district or the state
Right.
generally?
Well, one of the big reasons I ran for office really was just the high cost of living and the high cost of doing business. I was a small business owner at the time, and a homeowner, and I just felt like that the cost of doing all those things was just really exorbitant, and I think most people in New York State would agree with me. And so we know, throughout New York State that the cost of living and cost of doing business is sort of the number one issue on people's minds, and that's where we're really spending all our time. We're looking for creative ways to try to change that. One of the issues that we talk a lot about, and we'll probably be approaching your office about more as time goes on, is Trying to change the way that we fund public education. I think that we can ask our local governments to be more frugal and try to spend their money more effectively. And we can ask our schools to do the same. But I think until we really change the way that we're funding education, we'll never really see the big substantial cost savings to the taxpayers that we really want to see. And so we're actually spending a lot of time exploring how other states fund education and hoping that by doing that we will come up with some creative alternatives that we can bring back to our colleagues and share it with them and begin to really lead that discussion. The fact that we still pay into the education program based on what our property is valued at. If you're a homeowner or property owner, you're paying school taxes based on what that property's worth, which used to make sense back when the only people that owned any land were basically old white men back in the, when the British owned the land.
Our country.
Right, and that's not the way we live anymore. And so the property you own and the value of it does not really equate to what your ability to pay a tax is. And I think that we have to do something that's more fair, that takes into the account what your actual income level is versus just what your property is worth. Because we have a lot of senior citizens that live here in the Hudson Valley that have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in their property over the years, back when they were working steadily and had a higher income. And their properties are assessed at a very high value because they've taken good care of it, but yet now they're living on a very fixed income. They can't afford those high school taxes anymore, so they're leaving. And what I'm finding, at least in my district, is that many of my communities, especially the inner city communities in Beacon and Poughkeepsie, are becoming very lopsided. They don't have the diversity they used to have. The seniors are leaving much faster than they used to, and we're losing all of our role models. We're losing all of our community leaders. We're losing all the people that the youth used to look up to. And that can have a really devastating impact on a community if it gets out of control.
Because you do need a balance in a
Right.
community
Yes.
of all ages, economic abilities and
Right.
so on.
Yep.
It's really important.
Yes, it is.
And you're right. And other states do it differently. One of the other component parts that I've been working on was the circuit breaker to try to bring money back to the seniors who don't
Right.
have the income to try to help with that property tax. And actually, STAR and enhanced
Right.
STAR is one of the things, like a stopgap, I think, to help people. But I think what you're doing, looking at the whole
Right.
funding, is certainly beneficial.
Well, I
And-
think some version of that circuit breaker, is probably the most doable right now, some version of it, because it's a compromise between what your property value is worth and your income. It takes both into account, which would be a radical change here in New York State. We don't do that now. So I think it's probably a good place to start, and it wouldn't surprise me if some version of that gets passed in the next few years.
Right, yeah, I hope so.
I do too.
As opposed to checks going out.
Yes,
from
right,
all of our
right.
different levels.
Yes,
which
yes.
People will expect again.
Right,
So,
that's true.
now, on an environmental level, I mean, you have you have a lot of watershed areas and so on. You have a lot of
Yep.
lakes, farms, rivers. You have a beautiful district, actually.
It
A
is.
with a walkway
Right,
over
right.
the Hudson River, which I guess is in your district.
It is.
it not?
It is.
Yes.
Yep. The walkway starts in the city of Poughkeepsie.
Right.
And goes over into Ulster, which is not my district, but it spans the river. Yeah, I have the Hudson River. I really have a river district with quite a few farms in the northern and eastern part. Quite a few farms and. A lot of watersheds, a lot of lakes, a lot of reservoirs, a lot of rivers. So water is a big deal in my district, as it is throughout the world, really. And we know it's the most valuable resource that we have.
Right.
And
So have you touched on the fracking issue, the hydrofracking issue, and as
Yeah.
you go forward, we're pretty much on hold, I think, with that in the state of New York at the moment. But
Oh yeah.
we may not be. I don't know.
Who
go
knows what's
forward.
going to happen there? I'm happy with where we are. At least we've slowed it down and stopped it for the time being. I'd like to think that I had some little bitty piece to do with that. I've been very much against it pretty far back into my campaign. I was open, I like to investigate things, get the details before I really make a decision on it. During my campaign, early on, my wife and I, one Thanksgiving, this is how committed we were, during Thanksgiving, we drove up to Troy, Pennsylvania, which is just across the border, not too far from Binghamton, New York, the area where they want to do a lot of fracking. But in Pennsylvania, this is an area where they have and continue to do an enormous amount of fracking. So we went up there because we knew we'd be able to see a lot of it in one place. And first time I'd ever seen it. And it was really an eye-opening experience just to kind of see the activity, what kind of impact it has on the community, both the positive and the negative. The amount of trucks that are on the roads, the amount of crime that comes with it, the amount of air pollution that comes with it, and the sort of just real temporary sort of aspects about it, how it never really, I couldn't find evidence that it really helped build a community up. It all seemed very temporary. That's sort of one issue, but the issue that really put me in the court of being against hydrofracking, I think, is really just the hydro part of the fracking. I don't have a real objection to us getting the gas out of the ground or out of the shale rock. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing to do. We probably should be looking at a way to do that. What ultimately concerns me about it is using our water supply to do it. And I think if we weren't using the water to do it, I would be more open to it. But I can't imagine a justification that makes me feel good at night about approving this, knowing that it takes millions and millions of gallons of water to frack one well, and that water has to come from a reservoir or a lake or a river, and you never get that water back. And I think that the argument on fracking has been done in sort of the wrong way. I think if we tilted the argument so that it was more about the water, it would make more sense to a lot of people, because what you do is you bring that water back to the fracking site, and it's fresh water, and then you contaminate it with these chemicals that they need to do the fracking. And as soon as you do that, you have polluted that water. You've polluted millions of gallons of water that'll never be clean again. And
then you have to figure out a place to put it.
Then you got to figure out what you're going to do with it. So just those two aspects alone, we've got the water that was clean, now it's dirty, what do we do with it? To me, that's enough to be very alarming. The fact that we're now going to pump the stuff into the ground is a whole nother aspect that it just makes no sense. So I just don't see, in a time where we know that many places in our country are having high drought issues, many places in the globe are having high drought issues, we know it's the most valuable resource we have, we cannot live without it, why we would purposely pollute it, a resource that is not renewable. You know, there is no resupply. There's no one coming along once a month and saying, here's more water. Just doesn't make sense to me, and I think we have to find a better way to go about getting this gas out of the ground.
Right.
So.
Well, fortunately, the governor is kind of lagging in decision making, which I think is really good, and the health department, health commissioner is doing a report. And I would hope that they're all looking at the other states, because I went to Pennsylvania too.
I remember that, yeah.
I came away with very much the same feeling about it. And, you know, I always thought that it was an industry that's going to be there in that town for a long time, and it isn't. It disappears. When we were in Pennsylvania, everybody was moving to Ohio. So they just left what they were doing and off they went. And to me, that isn't really building a community. No. So
I think you found the same thing I did, because I remember I watched your video that you made of that, and you found the same thing I did, that this, at the time I was there, it was booming. There was a lot of activity going. There were, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people that were there working. I mean, there were a lot of people working, I'll get granted that, but it was odd to me that there wasn't, there was no hotel in town. There was no hotel being built in town. There was no new housing, no housing being built. There was a large quantity of temporary trailer parks, campers, RVs, trucks, tents, anything they could find. Clearly, these people were not staying there for any length of time.
No, they'd come from other places. I think they go along with the companies. Right, so they aren't always hiring the local people to do this. So, yeah, it's a problem. Now, you also have farms, and, you know, I'm becoming so much more conscious of making sure that we do what we can to protect them, because I know that they're under an awful lot of pressure. Just because they pay high taxes and the production is just more complicated. I don't know whether with all of our climate change that is probably making it even more difficult for them. So I assume that the Farm Bureau and others have a lot of conversation with you.
Oh yes, we spend a lot of time working with the Farm Bureau, and that's important, because they really are the voice of the farmers and the experts in the farming industry. You know, farming, just like water, these are critical things to us. You know, we can either take care of our own water supply or rely on other countries to give it to us, and we can either grow our own food or we can rely on other countries to do that for us too. You know, security in both water and food are critical to our future. Food security is something we talk about a lot up where I live, because we want people to take more of an interest in the local farming community. We're fortunate that a lot of people from New York City are starting to move up to Dutchess County and buy or rent small pieces of land and become sort of experimental farmers, raising you know, just enough crops to sell at your local farmers market, not making a huge profit, but taking great interest and pride in it. And we're hopeful that will begin to become something much bigger. It's hard to make a profit in farming right now. It's hard to actually afford the land. The taxes are very high. and we've got to find a way to do more to make it easier. This generation of kids are being raised in such a way where they don't always understand where their food comes from. I find certainly...
well, some of the schools now are actually, in my district, are doing gardens and
Yes.
so on, because they're trying to say, look, the carrot comes out of the
Yes,
ground.
right, not out of the can.
So, right.
Right, not out of the can. There are a lot of groups that are trying very hard to educate school children about, just how important food is. It's a different time. There was a time, my county is an old farming, Dutchess County is a very old farming community. It goes way, way, way back to the beginning of this country. And for most of its history, people just grew up around farms, and most of their family were working on farms. And so everyone knew what food was and where it came from, and it was not something that was a mystery, but that's not the way the world is anymore. Farms are very separated from our daily life, and if you don't take an interest, you can grow up not really understanding how important food is. But
I know the other thing, you've really been working on trying to get state monies in the budget and so on down to the district, and you shared your wonderful ability to get one of those grants in my community in Kent, which we both represent, and at the elementary school. Tell us a little bit about that one, because I think that was great.
Yeah, we had the chance through an economic development fund to fund a few projects in our district, and we certainly had a lot of requests for a lot more than a few. But as we were making our decisions about what we could and could not, fund this session, this playground kept coming back to the top, and it is something called the Imagination Station. It's in the town of Kent. It's essentially a community playground. It's built on a school property, but it's really the playground for the community, and they had lost it. They had had one before. It had fallen down and needed repair, and basically the kids were without a playground. And they came in.
I can't imagine that. I just can't imagine kids without.
I know, it's amazing. It's
something
it's
to
horrible.
climb on and swings and everything else.
It's just really sad. And they came and made a presentation to us in our office, and that kind of sat on my desk for a while. But we went down to Kent maybe about 2 months later after that presentation, and we went and spoke to a 4th grade class. I think you've done this before too. And they have a chance to ask us questions, which is always interesting when you're getting questions from 4th graders.
Actually, they have really good
ones. They do actually have really good questions. And but one of the questions was from this one young gentleman that asked if I was going to help them build their playground, the Imagination Station. And
did he want you to come with hammer and nails? No.
Well, whatever it took. And it made me stop and think, wow, if that 4th grade kid is asking me that must be really important to this community. So we made some more phone calls, and they had actually done a lot of work on their end. They had really done the research they needed to do. They were ready to go. They were just waiting for some funding. So we were able to deliver, I think it was $100,000 to them, which was just about what they needed to finish the project. So that's now underway, and they're starting to put it together. And as I said at the press conference, the next time we go back there, we're going to do a whole lot more playing and a lot less talking.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, that was great.
It's also helpful with the whole health of the community, health of the kids. As a former teacher, I know you have to get your kids out there and playing and running, and then they come back and they're just much better students after all of that activity. So
it's true. I believe strongly in trying to really invigorate the imaginations of our youth. I think that that's the real key to our economic success is teaching them to be individual creative thinkers. And I think that to do that, you have to give them some time to play and let their imaginations sort of wander and not just be confined to the classroom, which can be very stressful these days.
Right. It's actually good for adults to go out in the garden.
Yes, it is. It's good for all of us. Exercise is good for the mind, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know I have some people coming to my office to talk about Lyme disease, and I know that you've introduced some legislation, in our areas. I guess New York City, that's a difference too. New York City isn't really, Lyme disease is not top on their agenda, and yet we in the suburbs and upstate have this as an issue. What are you finding, and how did you kind of get into the whole issue of Lyme disease legislation?
Well, I was bitten by a tick during my campaign, actually.
Okay.
Right at, near the end of it, when it was at its highest sort of stress level, I found myself basically unable to operate for about 4 days. And I was able to find out what it was, get the antibiotics, and I was quickly sort of back to normal. But those are some of the worst 4 days of my life, and I thought to myself right then, wow, if this is what everyone else is going through, and if other people are going through much longer versions of this, this is not good. And it gave me just a better appreciation for the disease itself. And as I began to talk to a lot of people that have had episodes with Lyme disease and tick-borne illness, it's become clear to me that it really is approaching epidemic levels here in the Hudson Valley, and it is starting to affect everyone, families, children, adults, seniors, kids. And there are a lot of people that are essentially going bankrupt trying to cover the cost of the medical bills associated with this.
Right.
So
And some of them, because they're long-term,
yes. Yes.
it's even harder, right?
Yes. We actually have two pieces of legislation that we're pushing to deal with Lyme
Mm-hmm.
disease. One is called the Tick Bite Act, which deals with the insurance issue. It would essentially hold insurance companies accountable to covering the cost of long-term Lyme disease illnesses. So it would help those who are suffering now. And the other one, we think they work hand in hand, is called the Doctor Protection Act, which would protect doctors who are treating those with Lyme disease. A lot of doctors have been threatened with having their license suspended because they continue to treat those who have not been legitimately diagnosed with tick-borne illness. Mm-hmm. Part of the problem with this disease is that it's very mysterious and has a lot of different strains, a lot of different versions. We don't have all the answers that we need. But in the meantime, people are really sick and they're really mm-hmm. suffering. And it's a situation where eventually we could see a real problem come back to our small business owners or even our large companies when people can't report to work, when school teachers can't go to school, when bankers can't show up to do their job, because when this hits you, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, you've had that. I
yeah.
fortunately haven't yet,
yeah.
But I'm a gardener and I
Right.
know it's a possibility always.
Yes.
But it did really. Once you have it, I know other people said they really are knocked out.
Yeah, it's not fun, and it could, if we don't deal with it, aggressively, it could have an impact on our tourism industry. Mm-hmm, people mm-hmm. Already, I think, if you go out into a lot of our trails that used to be really full with hikers, there's not as many anymore. People are very concerned about it. Mm-hmm, you have to be very careful, and there are a lot of great groups doing a lot of research on this, and I'm optimistic we'll find a way to deal with it in the near future. But.
Right.
We've got to find a way to help these people that are suffering, so that's what we're trying to do.
Absolutely. Okay, kind of as we're wrapping up, you've had some ideas about reforming the legislature.
Yeah.
What, and that's hard to get done. Yes. By the way, I've had a long list
imagine.
for a long time. Some have gotten done, but
right.
it is hard. What do you think what do you think the most important things that we could do to make the legislature work better?
Well, I think there's sort of a few things, and not everyone agrees with me on all of these, but I believe strongly in term limits. I think that term limits would be a huge benefit in our state. I just feel like that there are too many people in the state Senate. That's where I know the people, the best. I don't know that many people in the Assembly. I know in the state Senate, I think there are people that have just been there for too long, and not that being there a long time is a bad thing, but what it seems to have done is they've seemed to have gotten very comfortable and not open mm-hmm. to change, mm-hmm. not open to new ideas. And I feel like that it makes it difficult to get new ideas implemented because of that. And so I think if we had an opportunity for more new leaders to run for office, for more people to come in and be a part of the system, it would help open up the doors to new changes. I think campaign finance reform is really critical. Mm-hmm. I think we have to really change how we fund our campaigns. I think we have to try to take the big corporate money out of it. Right. It is not... It is very difficult for someone like me. I am not independently wealthy. I don't have a lot of money. And,
right. And the issue is we really want everybody to be able to run for these offices.
Yeah, we do.
So I know you have more things on your list.
Sure.
We're going to have to stop.
Sure,
but I want to thank you so much, Terry.
Okay.
And I really enjoy working with you up in Albany and down here in the district. So
thanks for having me here.
Much luck.
I appreciate it.
I want to thank all of you for watching. If you have any questions that have come up, you can always call Senator Terry Gipson or call me at 914-941-1111. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good evening.